Nobody outside my small town knows my name. I taught primary school for 40 years in the same building, on the same street in the same small town where I was born. I never wrote a book. I have gave a talk to thousands of people. My name has never appeared in any newspaper that mattered to anyone beyond our county. By every measure the modern world uses to decide whether a life counted, I barely registered. And I am 84 years old, and I am here to tell you that I would not trade a single quiet morning of that life for anything the loud world could offer me. Because something was happening in that classroom, something slow, invisible, and completely unmeasurable, that I believe matters more than most of the noise I watch the world make today. Children were learning to read. Boys who had never once been told they were capable of anything were discovering that they were. Girls who arrived each September carrying weights no child should carry were put down gently, made to feel safe, and sent forward slightly more whole than they arrived. None of that was dramatic. None of it made the news. Most of it no one outside that building ever knew about. But it happened every single school day for 40 years. And the ripples from those quiet, invisible mornings are still moving outward in the world right now, in the choices of adults who were once children in my classroom, in the lives of children those adults are raising, in the small acts of kindness passing forward through generations that do not even know where the kindness came from. That is the quiet life, and it is not small. It has never been small. The world will tell you otherwise. The world, particularly world we live in now, with its relentless appetite for visibility, its worship of the follower count and the viral moment and the platform, the world will tell you that if no one is watching, nothing of value is happening. That impact requires an audience. That a life lived without an audience is a life half lived. I am here from 84 years of living one quietly to tell you that is one of the most dangerous and most dishonest things the modern world believes. Let me tell you about Thomas. Thomas grew up 2 streets from me. He was a bright, energetic, genuinely talented man, the kind of person who could have done anything with what he was given. And what Thomas wanted from the time he was very young was to be known. Not famous exactly, though he would not have refused it, but seen, acknowledged, recognized. He wanted the world to know his name and associate it with something significant. Thomas chased that want with everything he had. He built businesses, several, one after another, always with one eye on how they looked rather than what they built. He pivoted constantly toward wherever the attention was. He networked ferociously. He performed generosity publicly and cultivated relationships instrumentally. He was tireless and clever and strategically brilliant. And when Thomas died at 69, not old, not nearly old enough, the eulogies at his funeral were full of his accomplishments. But his 2 adult children sat in the front row with the particular stillness of people who had known mostly the version of their father that was being performed for an audience. His closest friendships, the ones that outlasted the usefulness, were fewer than he had believed. He had been seen by many, known by almost none. Now let me tell you about Rose. Rose was one of my students. She came through my classroom at the age of 7, a quiet, observant child who missed nothing and said very little. She grew into a woman very much like the girl, unhurried, deeply present, uninterested in the regard of crowds. Rose became a district nurse. She spent her career visiting the elderly and isolated in their homes, people the rest of the world had stopped visiting. She brought medication. She brought company. She sat with people who had not spoken to another soul in days, and she listened, truly listened, in the way that most people in a hurry can no longer manage. Nobody gave Rose an award for this. Nobody filmed her. Nobody shared her story online. She simply showed up, day after day, year after year, for people who needed someone to show up. For 32 years, I attended Rose's retirement gathering last year. It was held in a community hall that was full, with people she had cared for and their families, many of whom had traveled long distances to be there. There was no microphone, no presentation reel, just person after person standing up to say the same thing in different words. You came when no one else did. You made me feel that I mattered. I have been to many celebrations in 84 years. I have never seen a room with that quality of love in it. Rose had never trended. Rose had never been verified. Rose could not tell you how many followers she had because the concept was simply not a part of the world she lived in. But the room at her retirement told a story about impact that Thomas's eulogies for all their accomplished polish simply could not match. Noise is not impact. Visibility is not significance. And the number of people who know your name is not a measure of the size of your life. Now, 3 things earned in a classroom and in 84 years of watching quietly. First, choose depth over width. The world rewards width. More followers, more connections, more reach, more platforms, more presence across more channels, and all of that breadth produces a very specific kind of impact, wide, shallow, brief, a stone skipping across water. It touches many surfaces and sinks into none. Depth is different. Depth is what happens when you choose to be fully present to fewer things rather than partially present to many. When you go all the way down into one relationship, one community, one craft, one life rather than spreading yourself thin across a performance of living. Depth changes things. Depth leaves marks that last. Depth is what was in that community hall at Rose's retirement. Decades of going all the way down into individual human lives, one at a time without an audience. Ask yourself honestly, am I living wide or am I living deep? And which one at the end will have mattered? Second, trust the ripple you cannot see. One of the hardest things about a quiet life is that its impact is almost entirely invisible while it is being made. You do not get the metrics. You do not get the likes and the shares and the real-time confirmation that what you are doing is working. You act in faith, the faith that what you are quietly, faithfully, consistently doing is reaching further than you can see. But the ripple is there. I know this because I have lived long enough to see it come back. Former students who found me decades later to tell me about a moment, a single moment, often one I have no memory of, that changed the direction of their lives. A word said on an ordinary Tuesday morning that became a compass point they carried for 30 years. A moment of being seen and held and believed in that kept someone going through a darkness I was never told about. You cannot measure the ripple while you are making it. You can only trust that the stone thrown in goodness, in faithfulness, in quiet, consistent love is moving outward in the water long after your hand has let it go. Third, presence is the rarest gift you can give. In a world of distraction, of partial attention, of people physically present but mentally absent, to be truly, completely, undividedly present to another human being is an act of profound love. It is also increasingly an act of profound rarity. Rose had it. I watched her have it in my classroom when she was 7 years old. That particular quality of attention that makes the person receiving it feel, briefly, like the most important thing in the room. She carried it for 32 years into the homes of lonely people who had been waiting, often for days, for someone to arrive and simply be there. That is not a small gift. In a world of noise and speed and service, the person who slows down, shows up, and is genuinely present is doing something extraordinary, something that cannot be automated, cannot be scaled, cannot be performed for an audience and remain real. It is the gift that costs the most, because it costs you your distraction, your hurry, your need to be somewhere else, your performance, and it gives back more than any viral moment ever could. I am 84 years old. I taught in the same small school for 40 years. I retired without ceremony, without headlines, without any of the markers the world uses to declare that a life has been significant. And last year, at the retirement gathering of a woman who was once a 7-year-old girl in my classroom, I sat in a room full of people whose lives had been quietly, invisibly, completely changed. And I understood in a way I had always believed, but now could see with my own eyes, that the quiet life is never the small one. It is, in fact, the kind that endures. Live quietly if that is what is true for you. Do not let the noise of the world convince you that your unhurried, unperformed, deeply present life is anything less than the most important work a person can do. The world has enough performers. What it is desperately short of are people who show up, who stay, who go all the way down, who make the person right in front of them feel completely that they matter. Be one of those people, however quietly, however invisibly, however uncelebrated. The ripple will reach further than you will ever know.